Good afternoon. I'm Mark Allen with Gaper.io, and I'm here today with Sean Mitchell, the CEO and co-founder of Rezi. Good afternoon, Sean. How you doing?
Good afternoon, Mark. I'm great. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I know you're in New York. Are the hurricanes coming up your way soon?
Well, I don't know, but I'm originally from South Florida, so I am well acquainted with hurricanes. You know, usually back home, if it's not beyond a category 1 or 2, you don't tend to freak out. But these ones seem very large, so
Yeah.
hopefully we avoid it, and hopefully as many people stay safe as possible.
Yeah, that I agree. So, can you share a brief background of yourself and your work experience?
Sure. First and foremost, as you said, right, so I'm co-founder and CEO of Rezi. Prior to, and what is Rezi, and I'm sure I should probably clarify that, we're the only fully remote rental marketplace for long-term rentals where you can search, self-tour, and lease an apartment in 5 minutes for free, all from your phone. We launched in 2017, myself and my co-founders, prior to actually starting Rezi, I just had a career in finance. My co-founders each had a career in real estate and technology, respectively, and really the business came together when all three of us kind of centered on one core problem that we'd all experienced, which was the difficulty in renting apartments, particularly in a simple, seamless, and low-cost way. When proud graduate of Florida A&M University, started my career in 2009 at JP Morgan, after that joined a firm called Corbin Capital Partners in the financial space, but then was fortunate enough to work with my co-founders and my team to launch Rezi in 2017, and been doing that ever since.
Cool. And that was interesting. You started at JP Morgan in 2009. That was an interesting time there, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was an interesting time. It was an interesting time. I don't think anything compares to the time we're going through right now, but I'm sure a lot of people said that then as well. But I was fortunate enough to get an opportunity to work at JP Morgan in 2009, really right as I think the entire world was really at the nadir of the financial crisis and kind of figuring out what the economy and the world was going to look like. So it was really good opportunity, really opportune time to learn, and see a lot of things that you heard a lot of people say that's never happened, and like between 2009 and 2012, you heard a lot of like that's never happened before. Yeah. And so it was a good time to start and build a career.
Yeah, very good. So what has been your experience with remote employment, both as an employer and an employee?
Yeah, funny enough, so I would say I haven't really had the experience as an employee. I was always kind of in office before launching Rezi. But interestingly, earlier this year, I was on a trip back from California on a business trip, and I landed, I think this was the first week of March. And, that was when I think everyone was starting to like wake up to the realization that COVID was going to be, this wasn't just a blip. It wasn't something we could just write off. It was going to have a major impact to everyone's business. Probably 10 days later, we elected to have the entire team go remote, and we, since have made the decision that Rezi is going to be remote through the end of the year at a minimum. But created a lot of questions, right? I imagine anyone who manages teams, when they sent their direct reports of their teams home, there's a big question of, is my productivity going to suffer? Are people going to be able to interact with each other in the same way? What's going to, and there's also this sense of community and the social kind of fabric of the organization you build that you kind of wonder, can you maintain that in a remote environment? And I think what we found out actually is that being remote definitely presents some challenges, but it also presents a lot of advantages for both productivity and the opportunity to interact with members of your team that maybe you wouldn't have had as much of an opportunity to interact with in a status quo.
in a different way. And did you have an office in New York, and do you still have an office in New York?
We do have an office in New York. We did have an office in New York. We still have it. I think in the last, probably in the last quarter, I think there's maybe one or two people have gone in to pick up items that they left there. But it's an interesting time. Yeah, we've been working remotely for ever since March, and it's actually gone really well, and I'm thrilled with our team and how they've adapted to the numerous curveballs that have been thrown their way. But yeah, we have an office. We still have it. That's the case for now. I'm sure, like every other founder, will evaluate over time.
Yeah.
What makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the future of remote employment now that you've been doing it for about 5-6 months? And what do you think can be done differently to make it more effective?
You mean being remote?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think one of the inherent challenges of running a remote team is that I think psychologically it presents a lot of opportunity because that you can engage with each other pretty much at a moment's notice. There's really no friction in like having a meeting or huddling on a planning session or a sprint planning session. And I think that level of agility is really valuable, and it certainly helped us. I mean, I'll give you a really good example. So we went fully remote in March, and interestingly enough, back in March, we had always in our product roadmap had the plan to make all of our touring fully remote. One of the things about our service that we pride ourselves in is that we give tenants really the control of the rental process. So, anybody who rents an apartment from Rezi, once you indicate that you're interested, you're in complete control. You can schedule your tour. If you love that apartment, you can apply. Our software will instantly due diligence you. And you have the ability to close on the spot if you'd like to, and you're never going to pay us a fee. We're not going to charge you a broker fee. We're not going to charge an application fee. So it's really seamless, really frictionless. But one piece of that service had always been, like the rest of the real estate market, having physical, human interactions when you're viewing an apartment. And in the COVID era, that presents a really big challenge because at the end of the day, we couldn't have a staff that was broadly in the field for long periods of time, viewing, interacting with people, particularly when you're focusing on social distancing. And so there was a really big opportunity to accelerate remote touring as a feature. And because, interestingly enough, because we were working remotely, we were able to take remote touring, which was a feature we planned on deploying towards the end of the year. And we were able to get the entire team to hunker down, focus, and actually deploy it in April. And since then, we've seen a major KPI for us is leasing velocity. How fast can we lease apartments, and how much faster do apartments lease on Rezi versus in the regular market? And interestingly enough, while the rest of the New York rental market has actually slowed down in terms of their leasing velocity, apartments are taking longer and longer to lease, 50, 60, 70 days at some point. Rezi's leasing velocity during COVID has actually accelerated. This past summer was the fastest leasing velocity we've ever had as a company, period.
Wow.
And what the amazing takeaway from that is that by having a remote team, we were actually able to deploy a feature more quickly that incidentally also happened to deal with being remote. But created obviously some real value add for our business. Yeah. So I think, it creates some real big opportunities. I think the challenge, the flip side of that is that, again, like I said, when you don't get to see each other every day, when you don't get to interact with your colleagues every day, I think there can be some drag on your team from that, and I think leaders have to tackle that head on. And so, we've been really focused on how do we create opportunities for the team to interact with each other? How do we find events that allow us to participate together in a remote way? But yeah, I think if you can appropriately address some of the potentially negative impact of being remote, there's a huge amount of positive upside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good. So,
long answer.
Yeah, I know. Hey, that's great.
Yeah.
You've already talked a fair amount about Rezi, and what I'd like to know is, it sounds like you have two customers, the renter and the landlord. So it sounds like correct. And then I assume you get money from the landlords. And then what markets are you in also?
Yeah, so New York is our primary market. It's our core market. We do have some smaller portfolios in California and DC. We're starting to build a little bit in Miami, but lion's share of our effort has been in New York, and that comes from the fact that all three of the co-founders are New Yorkers. We experienced this rental market firsthand and really wanted to come in and address that as a starting place before expanding throughout the country. But it also has to do with the fact that strategically New York made the most sense because it's the largest rental market in the U.S.
Yeah, that would make sense. What's second, out of curiosity? I would think.
You said what's second?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the New York is number one, and then you have San Francisco and LA as number two, and number 2 and 3. And you can once you take price into account, then that kind of flips a little bit, because obviously San Francisco has taken the crown in terms of the highest priced apartments.
It's starting to change, though. I can tell you that it is changing.
Yes, that is changing. That's true.
So interesting. So you've talked about some of the challenges already, that COVID caused your company. Sounds like some of them were actually positive. Are there any other ones like you didn't quite expect, and how did you handle it?
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I would say, look, with balance, right? It's very, obviously the COVID crisis created a lot of meaningful challenges for not just, businesses, but, in a real human cost way and impact for the country. I think for Rezi in particular, we've had the benefit of being positioned to offer a service to our landlord clients that directly solves a core problem that's exacerbated by this moment, right? If you're a landlord with a vacant apartment, and you're used to being able to lease that apartment in 20 days or 30 days or a week, right now when you have so many people social distancing, so many people avoiding even being in the major metros, it's created a real core problem for residential real estate owners. And our software gives us, a very credible solution to that. And so in that sense, it's been, a boon to our business. We've actually been able to basically triple our landlord client base in the last quarter over the COVID, since COVID and the lockdowns kind of went into effect. But I think, while we're able to address that for landlords, I think our solution for tenants has remained largely the same. We just want to be the easiest place for you to find a rental apartment. And I think, tenants have appreciated, I think they've always appreciated that independence that we give them. I think just in an era where social distancing is now paramount, I think it just, again, has become even more valuable for them. But yeah, I think we're in a unique position that we're, fit for this moment. And I think you can't really plan that. It's just, depends on, couldn't plan it in 2008. You can't plan it now. Can't plan it the next time it happens. It just kind of works out that way.
Yeah, actually, if you think about it, you were in the right place at the right time, just out of luck. Have you had any thoughts about going into the corporate rental market at some point?
Yeah, no, I've been asked that a lot. No, not really. I mean, look, I certainly think there's going to be a lot of, the way we frame it at Rezi, there's going to be a lot of action there. Because I think a lot of companies are reevaluating their need for corporate rental space in general. And so that's going to be something that, you know, gets evaluated. And I would imagine that there are going to be a lot of startups that are positioned well to take advantage of that and be really creative. I think Notel is a great company, and they likely are well positioned to figure out solutions there. You know, I think Industrious, a lot of the co-working businesses, but also other companies. You know, it's just while we see the opportunity presenting itself, it just doesn't fit our mission. Like, our mission is very core focused on access to housing, and so we're going to remain focused on residential. But there are going to be big opportunities there, no doubt.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're going to be busy for a while too. So
yeah,
there's pros and cons to going off into different verticals.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So finally, I'm just going to ask you, there are companies like Gaper that help build, develop, and scale products, especially for startups like yourself. How important do you think that is going forward for CEOs like yourself and your CIO that need to hire the right talent and need to hire them quickly?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, whenever you're running a business, there are some core functions that you need to be able to do really well. You need to be able to you know, make something people love, and, you know, convince them that you're the right person to offer to them. You need to be able to raise capital. You also need to be able to hire well. I think, you know, you have to do all those things really well, pretty much all the time, to maintain a competitive edge. I think, you know, any tool or service that gives you the ability to particularly right now, to you know, solve these core problems quickly, to, you know, save time, which in my mind, you know, as we were a few minutes ago, we were talking a bit about the service. In my mind, one of the biggest value adds is the ability to scale and move in a very agile way, in a very quick way. You know, process like, you know, building a team or hiring a team that can take months and months and months. If you can, you know, reduce that timeline into weeks, that just pays enormous dividends. So I think, particularly now, everyone's focused. I think everyone who's making these sorts of decisions has now taken off the blinders of, you know, we have to remain in the status quo. And I think now there's a lot of embracing of the idea of how can we leverage being remote to our advantage. And I think, as it relates to hiring or any other factors, any tool that gives people the ability to move in a quicker, more remote direction for their business is going to have a premium right now, definitely.
I agree. Well, Sean, I want to thank you for your time today. It's been very, actually quite interesting, and I do think you are in the right place at the right time. Let me know when you really move into the San Francisco area, because I'll spread the word to the people I know here.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, absolutely.
There are a lot of rentals. I mean, I'm down in the suburbs, but there's a lot of rentals here too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a very big market.
Right, well,
and it's actually funny enough, it's where we launched, because we're a Y Combinator company. So when we were in Y Combinator, that's when we did our first rental transaction in Sunnyvale.
Oh.
Yeah. So
nice area. It's about 20 minutes south of me. So nice. Is that where you live, or were you up in the city?
So no, we were in Mountain View when we were there for the first half of 2017. But yeah, no, we know that market well. It is a market near and dear to our hearts, and absolutely, as we scale up there, I'll reach out.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you again, and have a great day.
All righty, Mark, take care.